Well, good afternoon, Danielle Ravier from Domaine Tempier in Bandol in Provence. And we really appreciate your joining us this morning for me and this afternoon for you for a tasting of your amazing wines. We should begin this by, certainly we would be remiss if we didn't recognize the passing of Lulu Perraud, who passed away, I think, about, what, a month ago?
Yeah, a month and a week ago, yeah.
And she was exactly 99, is that right?
No, she was going to turn 103.
Oh, wow. You know, yeah. It's a funny, amazing coincidence that Food and Wine magazine hired a writer in Minneapolis here to write her memorial. Steve Hoffman wrote an article in Food from Minneapolis, or St. Paul actually, wrote the article about Lulu in Food and Wine magazine to recognize her passing. He's really an amazing writer. He won the James Beard Award for best food writing several years ago. His writing is so beautiful and lyrical, but he's also a tax accountant, which I think is a kind of surprising combination of talents, that he's a tax accountant and also writes beautifully about food and wine. But but he had known Lulu and Richard Olney for a long time, and his article, if you haven't read it, his article is really, really beautifully written, recognizing Lulu's passing. It's in Food and Wine magazine if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it yet, and I guess somebody from Kermit's office is going to send this to us, and I would have a look anyway and find it. Thank you for the notice.
You will have tears streaming down your face reading this article. I promise. It's really beautiful. And I was thinking, how long have you been the winemaker at Domaine Tempier?
They hired me in 2000, so it's 20 years, 21 vintages.
Wow. And so, so you have a real understanding of the importance of Domaine Tempier in the wine world. After 20 years, you understand that.
I don't know. I just know that we try to make our best, you know, just to follow the line that has been given by Lucien and Lulu, and after that François and Jean-Marie. So I don't have exactly that feeling, you know. We are so relying on what has been done before us and the quality of the job done that it's pretty hard to consider, you know, that it's more important what they are doing than what they were doing, and just trying to follow that. So I don't have the feeling of being that much important. Tempier is important, not me, of course.
Well, I think that I was thinking about, I mean, honestly, I have been an enormous fan of Domaine Tempier wines for, I don't know, probably at least 30 years. So my thinking about them is kind of historical. And I was thinking about this conversation with you this morning. I think Domaine Tempier is unique in that it's this combination of a restaurant in Berkeley, Chez Panisse, which is maybe the most important restaurant in American restaurant history, certainly one of them. And their cuisine is in a lot of ways inspired by your wines.
Yeah.
And then there's Richard Olney's book. And then there's Kermit Lynch, who built his brand, his portfolio became what it became because of Domaine Tempier and Vieux Telegraph, and maybe François Ravenot, but mostly Tempier and Vieux Telegraph. And mostly Tempier is the reason that he is famous and important. So there's this small winery in this tucked away corner of France. You know, it's not Burgundy or Bordeaux. It's not Tuscany or Piedmont. It's not Napa or Sonoma. It's Bandol, and
Yeah.
you don't make millions of cases of wine a year,
No, not at all.
but your wines inspire the cuisine at this really seminal restaurant. That if you have you ever eaten at Chez Panisse?
Yes, yes, of course, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
And
I was gonna say.
I've met Alice several times, of course, because she was a very, very good friend of Lulu, and
Yeah.
they have spent so many times. You know, every time she was in Europe, she was spending a couple of days, at least a couple of days with Lulu. And of course, we owe a lot to the people you mentioned. Richard first, because he introduced um, the cooking, Lulu's cooking to the USA, but he also introduced us to Alice, and then through I guess through Alice he introduced us to Kermit,
Right.
and both of these two persons have done so much for us. You know, it's incredible what they have done. I mean, they built our renommee. How do you say that? How famous we are. They built it. Alice and Kermit did it. The wines, of course, I hope a little bit,
Mm.
but they have done a great job for us, crazy job. So we must be grateful to them. Really, that's very, very important.
Well, I would encourage everybody watching this to be sipping the Bandol Blanc, the 2019 Bandol Blanc, while we're talking right now. Don't want to forget that this is a wine tasting and not a lecture. But of course, Danielle, what Alice's restaurant and Kermit's championing of your wines wouldn't have amounted to a hill of beans if the wines weren't so special.
Yeah, we are lucky, you know, and we are lucky that the generation of Lucien and Lulu, they believed in the appellation Bandol. You know, we are in the south. It was known. In fact, we are close to Languedoc, and we are part of this big region that was concerned only about with big production of wine. You know, and in the south to be blended most of the time with Northern African wines for the massive consumptions we did have at that time. So nobody was that much concerned about quality wines in the region. Doesn't mean that there were no quality wines. Of course, there were some, but not that much concern about them. And my feeling is that we will never be grateful enough also to these guys because they decided to put up, you know, rules very restrictive, saying that you don't have to overtake 40 hectoliters per hectare. Vines must be at least 8 years old to produce red wines. We must age our reds for 18 months in wood. All these very restrictive rules have been put together because Lucien and his mates were thinking that it was the conditions, it was the only condition to give the possibility to make great wines in the region. They were right because they were taking wines for the beginning of the 20th century, and these wines were 30, 40 years old, and they were just, for them, unbelievable. So they thought we could produce something interesting. But you must imagine that when they started to, nobody was paying that much interest to Bandol. You know, who cares about that? As you mentioned, the places that were known were, of course, Bordeaux, Hermitage, Burgundy, and Châteauneuf, and of course the satellites of Châteauneuf. But otherwise, all the other regions were not that much in in good shape, let's say, for concerning quality wines, and especially in the south. So they have done a crazy job, and they were right, especially focused on Mourvèdre, of course, for the reds and the rosé, and that was very, very important. So yeah, you're right. It's Bandol for me has always been so specific. It's a small place. It's quite protected. It's just imagine sort of following slopes that are facing to the sea, and very, very good conditions because we have the end of the Mistral to clean everything, but it's not too cold, it's not too hot because we are close to the sea, we are on the shore or close to the shore. So yeah, conditions are just crazy, and hopefully we try to make some good wines.
You know, if you ask wine experts what's the best Pinot Noir in the world, they might say Romanée-Conti. Maybe they would mention some Oregon Pinot Noir or New Zealand Pinot Noir or Patagonian Pinot Noir, or probably they would say Romanée-Conti or something that Leloux-Leroy makes. If you ask them to, what's the best Cabernet Sauvignon based wine, it might be Chateau Latour, it might be Chateau Margaux, it might be Harlan Cabernet. There'd be a lot of answers. Or Syrah, you might get Penfolds Grange, or you might get, Chapoutier Le Mayal. There's be a lot of answers. But if you ask, what's the best rosé in the world? Maybe someone might say Chateau Moussard and Domaine Tempier rosés are the two best rosés in the world. But probably they would say Domaine Tempier is the best rosé in the world. Right?
When well, it has been said a lot of time. Of course, it's not to me to say that, but what my answer to that is that I prefer to say that's the one you prefer. Saying the best, saying you are the best, is always a bit. It's not only about being modest. It's just to be fair. Wine is important for a moment. What you are sharing with friends, and luckily with Tempier, we have always had that feeling that the wines are very, very friendly. People are happy to have them, and it's always giving lots of joy to the people when drinking. So that's very important for us too.
But
then
the reds,
the best, I don't know.
The reds are predominantly or 100% Mourvèdre?
No, in the tradition was that we are in the south. If you look at the map, you will see that the more you go down south in France, the more you have blended wines. The more you go up north, the more you have single grapes.
Right.
And I think it's part of our history in that we must keep that. Of course, there is a bunch of producers now, the larger part of the producers in Bandol now, they would like to be allowed to produce 100% Mourvèdre. For the moment, it's not in the rules of Bandol, but it's going to be. It might be the case in the future. For the moment, we don't have to make 100% Mourvèdre, and generally speaking, it's at least 50% Mourvèdre, completed with mostly Grenache and Cinsault, and also a little bit of Carignan and Syrah if you want, but maximum 10% each. And you must have a maximum of Mourvèdre of 95%. Why? Just to keep the idea of blending. I think it's very, very important. If the old guys were thinking about blending, they were having good reasons for that. So I don't see any reason why we should stop that. And for me, it stays very, very important to keep that idea of blending. So for example, the classic cuvée is around 75% Mourvèdre, competed with, if I'm right, around 12-14% Grenache, 9 or 10 Cinsault, and the rest is 3 Carignan and a very small amount of Syrah, 1% of Syrah.
Well, the point I was driving at is that your rosé, I would say, the best rosé in the world, and I've tasted a lot of rosé, and I've tasted a lot of different vintages of yours, and I think you can argue that the reds are the best predominantly Mourvèdre wines. Also, the finest predominantly Mourvèdre wines. I mean, what would be the challenger? What other predominantly Mourvèdre wines in the world are there that are this quality? I can't think.
I've tasted some. Things are changing so quickly with global warming that it's changing a lot. In the past, if you look at the map of France, you will see that the two places where you could find a lot of Mourvèdre in the past were Collioure, south of Banyuls, and Bandol. And surprisingly, these two places are the sunshine space of France. And if you look at the map also, that was like if it was the northern limit where the Mourvèdre could find a good expression, because it's a late harvest grape, and it could reach a good maturity in these two places, whereas up north that started to be a bit difficult. And where it's originally from in Spain, Jumilla and Yecla, south of Valencia, close to Alicante. These places, the wines were most of the time, in the past, too heavy, not very interesting, and not very complex, in fact. sometimes now you taste some coming from up north, up in the mountains, in the south of Spain, that are quite interesting, to my opinion. I've tasted also some good stuff now. I've seen some fellows from California doing some really interesting things without following, over ripeness or things like this, but trying to keep some balance. I remember also from Australia, it's called in Australia, it's called Mataro, and local time in California also. From Torbreck, I've tasted a very interesting wine from Torbreck in a couple of years ago, based on Morvel. Very old Morvel.
Paul Draper at Ridge Vineyards makes a Mataro that
exactly,
is
also
pretty good. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you swing in the swing every day? Do you swing? What was it? 100 swings and a glass of rosé every day is the reason she lived to 102.
I guess, yeah. That was, she was training her brain, practicing Scrabble every day. If she was alone, she was playing left hand and right hand, and but always finding somebody to play with her and keep her mind working. And she was doing something very surprising. You should try. I don't want to try because I'm not going to be able. Every morning she was writing everything she has done the day before, and especially what you have been eating, and that's not so easy, especially when you passed 100 years old. It starts to be hard for me, and I'm 55, so I don't know. And she was doing, she was using a swing once a day. Of course, she loves, I can't change because for me she's still there, so I still say she loves drinking wine. She said, she always said, water, I hate water, even under the the shower. I close my mouth. So
Wow.
and she said, water is only for rust. I don't want water. She was drinking yet mostly red wines. She loved champagne and champagne and red wines always. At least one glass for at least one glass for per lunch.
Well, what I heard was that she swang. She did 100 swings on that swing and drank a glass of rosé every day, and that was
Yeah,
her.
she was.
What she believed was the reason she lived so long.
Yeah. She was doing two turns of 50 on the swing and then a glass. And sometimes she was also having a special cycle, a home cycle, but not the one you can find in very modern one, an old one, a small one, very funny. And she was sitting in a chair, with arm and cycling a little bit like this. No, that was big fun to see her. Always joyful. She said you could raise the glass to Lulu because that's what she wanted. She said, I don't want people to be sad. I want people to be happy and have a glass of wine and raise the toast to my memory. I don't want people to be sad.
Tell us about the 2019 Bandol Blanc.
So 19 was a very interesting vintage for us because of good conditions, good reserves of water during the winter, dry during the seasons, but good conditions, not too heavy. And the white you are tasting is a blend of, if I'm right, a little bit more than 55% claret, then 26, 27 uni blanc, and then the rest, the 15 rest are split in between Rolle, Bourboulenc, and a little bit of Marsanne. All this is vinified nearly together or depend on the ripeness. And then the wines are aged for, this one was aged for 6 months, a bit more than 6 months in big oak vats. We don't use barriques, but they don't stay in stainless steel tanks too. It's vinified and aged in wood, just to let it express itself properly during the winter. So it's well, the way we were thinking about the white, just to help them pass the winter in the wood, not looking for the wood, of course, for the wood in the wine, but just helping the wine to pass the winter properly.
Well, it has a beautiful texture. It's the mouthfeel is really wonderful, and you know, I hope I'm never presented with it in a blind tasting, because I can't imagine trying to identify Claret,
Yeah,
Roll,
you're right.
Barbelin, Ugni Blanc in a blind tasting. I think I would know it was Old World in a blend, and I don't know if well, maybe in a blind tasting this afternoon, I might be able to identify it as, as Bandol Blanc, but tomorrow probably not. It's special. It's excellent. I mean, it's really excellent. What kind of food do you typically pair with the Bandol Blanc?
Mostly fish, generally speaking, fish, you know, direct on the grill, or if you don't have, if you can't grill them in the oven, you know, I can't remember the English. How do you say that? I can't remember the name. Sorry.
What's the
But
French
you know,
word?
the local fish bar, and we call
Tempier?
them sea bass,
Sea bass,
and
right.
yeah, I love sea bass with our white. Just, you know, a little bit of branch of fennel that you can just find in the vineyards. You put it inside, olive oil, few onions, and lemon, slice of lemon around, and that's okay. That's perfect with the white for me. It's also interesting with tapenade, but it could be, the tapenade mustn't be too strong.
Well, I think with this wine, I like the lemons and the fennel and the onions would be beautiful.
Yeah.
With sea bass, or there's
I think it's good.
a called Saint Pierre.
Yeah, Saint Pierre is lovely. Yeah, especially if you can do, you know, a sort of a sauce with the liver. You use the liver of the Saint Pierre when it's cooked in the inside, and after you crush it and you mix it with the juice coming from the Saint Pierre, some olive oil and some citrus again, and then you spread that on the slice of fish. That's lovely.
And bouillabaisse? Is it good for bouillabaisse?
Bouillabaisse, because you have the spicy aspect. I prefer rosé with the bouillabaisse. You could have the white also, but I prefer rosé personally.
Right. Okay. So let's taste. We're running out of time. I only have 8 more minutes of your time. So we started this new Zoom broadcast. We're calling One Expert, 2 Wines in 30 Minutes. This is the second of them. And we're really excited for you to be one of them. Actually, one of my most important clients, when we started doing these Zoom tastings, said, my bucket list wine tasting is Daniel Ravier at Tempier.
Oh,
you're his number one. So that's one of the reasons that we're here with you today. I mean, I couldn't agree with more, but so tell us about the 2018 Bandol Rouge. Please.
So 2018 was a difficult year for us, and I'm very happy with the result concerning the conditions we did have. That was a rainy vintage, not very easy, but I'm very happy with the result, because the wines are, you know, it's always the same maybe in model, but most of the time in all the appellations, you know, what we call small vintages are generally lovely, and big vintages sometimes you're a little bit disappointed. And 18 is the, yeah.
Daniel, could you back up a little bit? You kind of we missed part of what you just said. So you're talking about 2018 being a difficult vintage.
Yeah, difficult because rainy and not very easy. But like always, these supposed to be small vintages are lovely wines. You know, it's looking a little bit like 2012, and 2012, honestly, which was a hard one too, is probably the best wine in the cellar right now. It's so good. I love the vintage. It's unbelievable. So my feeling is that 18 is quite following that line with a little difference that I must mention is that the acidity is not very high on 18. So it's lovely wines, but I'm not sure that they are going to age that long. They could age for 10 years, 15 years. It's not a problem. But usually Tempier wines you could age them for far away longer, 20 years, 30 years. It's not that much a problem. And here on 18, I'm not that much confident about that. But I love the vintage because it's not so powerful and not so maybe with sharpening tannins that we could have when young on Bandol, but it's very, 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 very attractive. It's so easy, you need so easy drinking. I mean, you can drink the bottle on your own so easily that so I like this kind of vintage. Sometimes they are really useful to
Well,
wait the other one.
I mean, not every vintage is going to be the greatest vintage in history. And, you need wines to drink when they're 5 years old while you wait for the Grand Vin to be ready at 20 years old. Otherwise, what do you drink what are you drinking while you wait for the Grand Vin to be mature?
Well, with your experience, you must remember that everybody was speaking about 2002 in Burgundy, saying, well, that's a fabulous vintage, that's extraordinary, blah, 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 blah. And everybody has forgotten 2001. And so far, I've taken so more pleasure on 2001 than 2002 in Burgundy that, sometimes it's we as producer, we have our feelings, we know sometimes my wondering is, do we put up on the wine what we have in the memory of the conditions, when we were harvesting or on the season. And because of that, maybe we are saying sometimes things about the vintages that are not exactly we have too much backwards, backyards that are in behind saying, well, no, it mustn't be like this because the conditions couldn't give that. And yes, it matched. So it's crazy.
I attended a vertical tasting of Chateau Margaux once and sat next to Paul Draper from Ridge. And one of the wines that was served at this vertical tasting was the 1982 Chateau Margaux, which is, it's a great, it was a controversial vintage in 1985, but now, regarded as one of the greatest vintages ever in Bordeaux. And certainly 1982 Chateau Margaux is a remarkable wine. But Paul, under his breath, where nobody but me sitting right beside him could hear, was talking about what a flawed wine it was. That it had, tremendous volatile acidity, and it was just to him it was just undrinkable because he couldn't just enjoy the pleasure of the wine. He was too busy analyzing the wine, and at Margaux, 83 is a better vintage than 82, but the 82 is really great, and it certainly isn't. There are technical things that are amiss about it, but it's still an extraordinary wine.
Yeah,
you can't get caught up in, it's dangerous to get caught up in talking about what's wrong with it instead of just talking about how beautiful it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's how we thought when working.
This 2018 Bandol Rouge is, it's youthful, it's young. There's a lot of tannins there.
Yeah.
But it's balanced. The tannins are balanced with the fruit, and it's I think, as you say, like a 5 or 6 year wine. It's going to be.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. You could enjoy it quite nearly now. With some red meat. Barbecue, things like this, easily. No problem. But you could wait a little bit to have some complexity. It's always interesting with more red to have this. We say arome tertiaire. I don't know how you went.
Tertiary aromas, third level aromas, right?
But yeah, all these gamey and sous bois and and
Right.
sometimes a bit stinky with Morven, but it's part of the Morven. It's we love the beast, and it's really really interesting to see a different side of the wine, but when keeping a little bit of fruit, of course. So it needs a little bit of time, but you could have them right now if you also.
Well, you know, you have to have a Tuesday night hamburger pizza wine. You know, not every wine is a Saturday night rack of lamb wine, right? So you have to have,
Exactly.
you know, I'm not going to take up more of your time. I would like to ask one more question if you don't.
Yeah.
Can I ask two more questions?
Of course, no problem.
How did you end up being the winemaker at Domaine Tempier? Where did you come from?
I'm coming from the Alps. My father was a farmer, but he had vines, but the vines were driven by cousins of myself, and my father just cared about cows. He was a real farmer. He needed to have cattle. He needed to have cattle, and but when I grew up, I was always concerned a little bit about wine. And finally, I made my studies in Montpellier, and just after school, I ended in Bandol by accident in a way, and fell in love with Bandol. I first started work in '87 at Domaine Haute, and then I moved to a small place called Domaine de Souillou, and that's where I stayed 10 years. Very interesting place because everything has to be built. You know, the wines made before I came were not very interesting. There were olive trees also that were quite poor, and we tried to increase the level of everything. And finally, the Perrault brothers, François and Jean-Marie, they asked me to join the property. That was a hard choice for me, and honestly, trust me, I still don't understand why they asked me to come, because the style of wines I was making were so different than Tempier. But luckily for me, they just gave me the opportunity to find the place I was looking for without knowing it. You know, Tempier, as you mentioned, Tempier is such a specific place and such a crazy place that I had the feeling of changing of universe. You know, it's just a different world for me.
Well, you may have just answered my last question, but I always ask this question, what is your most memorable wine experience?
Oh, so many. You mean I can't, most of the time I can't separate the wine I've been tasting and the people I've been tasting with.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe I should say there are so many, but I do remember two wines that were just so, you know, that eat you like a hammer, and you know that's Chav 78 and 90, two times, just unbelievable.
Wow.
And the other one just crazy was thanks to an English importer of us 5 years ago, 1961 Cheval Blanc.
Wow.
And you know, then you can say, well, it's far it's far away. It's just crazy.
When was the last time you had last glass you had with Lulu?
Last class we have with Lulu, we had the 2017 pour Lulu, you know, the vintage, because she loves, you know, when we were making aperitifs or everything, I was always forgetting that she prefers to have red wine. So I was coming back and said, "Oh, Mampero, I just forgot you. What would you like to have?" And she said to me, "Well, I need a red wine, of course. And what do you want?" I said, "At my age, I need a young boy, so the youngest you can find." And the good point why that sometimes, you know, we just pick up And we did that last time. We had the 17 pour Lulu, and side to it, we just drink a little glass of 2019 La Tourtine.
Wow.
That was just, just directly from the vats.
From the vats,
that was just, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to end. That's a good place to end. Thank you so much for this. This is very, very special. And, we've had a lot of amazing people on these Zoom conferences that we've done, famous winemakers from France and Italy and California and Oregon and South America and New Zealand. And for me, this is a highlight. I really appreciate your time and
you're welcome.
And thank you and please continue making these extraordinary wines so that we can enjoy them.
We will try. Thank you so much for hosting us, and the Domaine, of course.
Thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome. Ciao, ciao.